mentioned maybe recruitment is probably what it's used for a lot of
Yeah.
of the time. So just dumb it down even more than that, then Craig. So how, for those that are wondering, well, why would tracking data help the recruitment process? So what kind of things would a potential recruitment analyst be using that data for? Just to maybe, let's say they are looking for a new centre forward. How will the
Yeah.
tracking data help maybe inform
Yeah.
the decision?
Yeah, well, I think the tracking data for the sophisticated, well-resourced clubs, they will probably use that tracking data, as I mentioned, sync it with event data, and derive a lot of different metrics that are really bespoke to their club model.
Yeah.
And plug a player in, do they fit their model? Yes or no? There's more to it than that. But with our, I can probably go into a bit more detail on our derived metrics, such as the physical data and the contextual. So, say if you're looking for a centre forward, at a club, you might start, and I know we're going to look through an example later on, but you might start with like global benchmarking. Which leagues physically have really quick players that have good sprinting capacity, or sort of a good engine, whatever you term that, in a club as. You can start to look at maybe a league benchmarking. You can then filter into, okay, what are some of those dominant teams within some of those leagues that actually express those attributes that we are really interested in our centre forward profile.
Yeah.
So that's some really kind of easy wins. And then you can obviously go into granular level of, okay, well, we've got these specific attributes that we know we need our centre forward to do. From a physical perspective, can we just tick those boxes initially? And that sometimes is the initial point of contact, or the initial search will be, the game has gone, the game is physically dominant, and it has increased. If you look at some of the data points over the course of the last few years, the physicality
Yeah.
certainly certain competitions has increased. So actually, it might be the first baseline level. If they're scouting players and these players are available, do they hit a minimum threshold of physicality? Like, if they don't, maybe we're not going to kind of spend as much resource looking at them, and we'll prioritize other players. And then as soon as you add the contextual data, which I know we'll explain in a little bit more detail, understanding the movement patterns, the passing ability, and how they deal with pressure, you combine all that together into a specific profile that you as a club are aligned on for your centre forward, and then you'll start to really generate a powerful sort of search engine. Okay, we want a quick forward that runs really runs a lot, or sprints a lot in possession, because we're a transitional team, and is very direct, that runs in behind and gets into the box in crossing situations. Really clear profile. Let's go and search the earth for those players that
Yeah.
fit that profile. So that could be a journey of a recruitment analyst or recruitment team to try and find that particular profile. So that's probably aligning all of those data sets together, really, to try and basically search for undervalued. Everybody wants
Yeah.
a good profile of a player that's undervalued, that they can get on the sort of cheap, which is, I think, is difficult.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely is difficult. So you hinted there about kind of showing an example. So we can kind of lead into that now, Craig, if that's okay. You mentioned you've got a couple of slides we'll potentially look at, so it might give
Yeah, yeah.
the viewers kind of a bit more so they can see it with their eyes. So I think you should be able to share your screen, Craig. So if you want to go for it, and we'll see what you've got.
This is kind of the same sort of workflow, really, as we just explained, but obviously using some data. And I put a German slant on it. Obviously, the Euros are on.
Hmm.
Sure, everybody's probably got a bit of a headache after last night's win. I'll be honest with you, I was supporting England as well, even though I am Welsh. But
I was gonna ask you that. So yeah, obviously when this video comes out, it will be after the final. So either England or European champions at that point, or they may have lost. But yeah, we're recording this the day after they beat the Netherlands, and I was gonna ask you if you watched it with a smile or with a bit of a, were you a bit as a
yeah,
Welshman, were you happy or not, basically?
well, if I'm being honest, when Ollie Watkins scored that goal, and he made that running behind, we've this may be something we can share at a later date, but we did a bit of a study on Ollie Watkins and his movement this season, and his ability to kind of run in behind, be really direct, and sort of run within the width of the box. And I was looking at that and thinking that's perfect. He may have only done it a couple of times last night, but it was perfect. It was his opportunity. So I did get up off my seat and spill my drink in celebration. So I'm not gonna lie to you. I definitely was supporting England last night. But
Nice.
yeah, and we'll have to see how the final this weekend goes. I did say to some of my friends last night, if Spain are wearing red, I'm going to find it very difficult to support England, as it's red versus white. But yeah, no, I'll be rooting for England this weekend.
Perfect.
Um, so yeah, I put a bit of a German slant on this, obviously, because with the Euros, and all we're doing here is we're looking at sort of two metrics, and of course, most of our clients will combine lots of different metrics to understand, globally where leagues are for physicality, let's say. So this is something that we call intensity. We're looking at peak sprint velocity, so that ability to repeat sort of top speeds, and then the count of high intensity actions during ball in play time. And I've just highlighted the top 5 leagues as well as the Championship and obviously the Bundesliga 1, 2, and 3. So you can start to get a bit of an understanding of where different competitions sit for physicality for these metrics. So that's often, the first line. And if I just pick on one, you've got the Czech First League, which is, quite physical, that ability to repeat those high intensity actions is quite high. And of course, the Premier League, we'd expect to be at the top.
Yeah.
On average, every player is quick and is probably quicker than, any of the other players in any of these other leagues. So, but what you can do then is you can sort of filter that down into, well, we want to look at a specific league. So we're looking at Bundesliga 2. What do those teams look like for certain physical sort of attributes? And here I've just highlighted St. Pauli, who got promoted, I believe, last year. And we're looking at the minutes they spend in possession on the X, and then the player average meters per minute, which is kind of a bit of a signal for kind of work rate. And they dominate the ball, or at least I believe. I haven't watched a single game of them, but as they're going to Brighton, or as the manager's gone to Brighton, I assume his philosophy is to dominate the ball.
Yeah.
So they have a lot of time in possession, and therefore the kind of work rate, similar to the sort of Man City, Liverpool, or the dominant teams, they at a player level, their kind of work rate and movement is lower. We often see, but then when you flip that to the out of possession, so the opponent team in possession, and we've got the same metrics here, but we can now see that St. Pauli have a higher work rate out of possession, and the minutes that they spend out of possession is lower, obviously, because they're a dominant ball playing team, I imagine. So you can then start to dig into the detail a little bit further. This could be used for match analysis. It could be further used for that recruitment drive. Are we signing a player that plays in the type of team physically that we want? Yes or no? And then you can take it another level, as we mentioned. And on purpose, I've done Germany 1, 2, and 3, Belgium and Austria. I don't know any of these players. I did that on purpose, so I can't pass any comment.
Yeah.
But again, simply looking at a profile. So we're looking here for a centre forward with pace and with sprinting capacity when their team has possession. So maybe that type of transitional direct forward. So you can now start to see the top right hand corner, those players that are relatively quick and that also have good sprinting capacity when their team has the ball.
Yeah.
So you can start to get a little bit of a feel of building that profile and trying to find those players that fit our needs as a club and as a recruitment department. And then the next phase of this is now starting to combine some other metrics into that. So we mentioned about our contextual metrics. We call it game intelligence. So that's off-ball running. It's passing synergy to off-ball running. So if you have a player that's in possession, they have lots of different off-ball runs to try and pass to. It's understanding the synergy of that. And then also pressure. So we understand the player that's in possession, what's the pressure that they're receiving. So a lot of this is centered around, in possession. Out of possession or the defensive side of the game is something that we're working on releasing towards the end of the year and next year. So this is taking a profile, so genuine words that a coach has said to us. I'll just read them out. So we want a striker that's, mobile, has speed, plays on the last line, gets in behind, and tests the opponent's centre-backs. Yeah. So that description, we've then taken some of the metrics that apply to that, in our opinion, like sprinting distance capacity, like peak sprint velocity capacity, which is PSV, and then runs in behind and runs in central channels. Mm-hmm. So that builds our search for that profile. And if we look at the opposite, I won't read this out in as much detail, but basically a player that drops in, that can sort of link the play, is composed under pressure. The profile and the data that we've used to feed that profile is more centered around movement, like coming short, pulling wide and getting into the half spaces, passing to their teammates in dangerous positions and dealing with pressure. So we've removed the physical aspect, and that's just our choice for the profile. And every club I met a club this week, and every club has a different profile, right? They want different things from their players. And that's the beauty of this, is, you start to add other forms of information in here as well, like event data, like biographical data, and you start to really get a nice profile. So if I take that to a simple bivariate, on the y-axis, we've got performance on, direct metrics. So at the top there, you can see players that are performing high on those direct profile metrics. And on the x-axis, we've got the performance. You probably can't see it too well, but the performance on the link-up style metrics. So you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, you've got players that are more of a link-up. On the bottom right, you've got the Harry Kane type, those players coming to feet. And on the y-axis, you've got the more Ollie Watkins type players, let's say.
Yeah.
So just as a final exercise, I've just chosen, again, these are random. I honestly don't have any clue who these players are, but these three are performing high on those direct metrics. So if we take these three players, and we dig a little bit deeper into our off-ball run data, so we can understand at an event by event level. So in a match, there's on average we detect I think it's about 500 of these off-ball run events. At each event, we can give so much more granular detail. And for example, we can understand the average speed of that movement and in this situation, the defensive line height when that movement is initiated, or what I've called in the title here, the opportunity, the space in which you have to run into. So for just runs in behind only runs in behind, we're looking at both speed and the opportunity to kind of run into. And for these three players, we can see that they're all running, a decent speed above, let's say, 20 kilometers per hour. But the line height is slightly different. Bassett, I think, is having more opportunity, let's say, more space to run into, because the line height at the start of his run is higher, and the other two have slightly less. So there's not too much difference between them. But the last stage might be to look at how they look on an actual sort of pitch map. So now I've taken those runs in behind by those three players, and I'm looking at only the runs that happen above 20 kilometers per hour. Sorry, and I'm also looking at the threat. So we have a threat model which tells us, whether the run is dangerous or not. And on the left, Bassett, his running style is interesting. Probably more kind of in green are the dangerous runs. So it's more kind of, I guess, in to out with some maybe more transitional sort of sideways running across the pitch. Davis is slightly higher in terms of the number of dangerous runs. So 68% of his runs are dangerous, a little bit more direct, still some sort of in to out movements. And then Schuler on the far right is, again, nearly 90% of his runs are dangerous. And there's no, it can be relatively simple. He's running within the width of the box like Ollie Watkins, and he's getting to the edge of the box and in the box, and therefore his runs are, more dangerous. And quite a nice exercise to see, okay, well, maybe for us, all these players are viable options, but actually now we've seen Schuler and his movements, he's a direct fit for what we want, and there's perhaps less transitional time in terms of getting him in and telling him exactly what we want. We can just say to him, okay, do what you were doing at your previous club. That's perfect for us. We can show him this. We can also we can link this back to the video as well. We can pull an XML file and you can use that in the various different softwares that are out there, tie it to video and start playing these instances out. So that there is probably like a decent sort of workflow into how you can go from physical benchmarking at a global level, combining it with a really specific kind of profile, and then going a bit deeper into some more what we call dynamic event level information. Chris, I don't know if you have any questions. I'll do
No,
my best.
that was really interesting. So yeah, thanks for that. I also didn't know any of the players, but I've just Googled Luca Schuler. So shout out to Luca Schuler. He's a very dangerous runner by the looks of things. So I don't know, people watching might know these players, but yeah, that was really interesting to see how the stages of kind of moving through the process, I suppose. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, that was brilliant. So